Hey guys, my guest today, Alan Pearce, will be talking about what happens when you're put in a coma. Be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. Out here on the West Coast, it's lunchtime because it's noon, and on the East Coast, I believe it's around 3 p.m. So, and you got Central Time figured in there, which would be 2 p.m., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So welcome. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal issue or you think you might have one, we can help you out. It may take us a couple of days to get to you. California is a big state. Had to push my button. There we go. California is a big state. So like I said, it may take us a couple of days to get to you. But in the event that that happens, we do have mediums and psychics on staff who can phone you and talk and do a read and tell you whether or not something's paranormal or they think it's paranormal. And then they have the ability, in most cases, to settle down the energy of whatever's happening until we can get out there. But we have, like I said, there's people up and down the state that we have on staff. So it doesn't take us more than 2 or 3 days to get to you. So the turnaround will be faster than you think. If you want to find us, go ahead, check us out. The easiest way right now, because both our websites are under maintenance, so you're going to want to look for us on Facebook. You can look for us at our California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, or me, my name, Charlotte Cosa, or you can look it up on California Haunts Radio Facebook pages, or just Google us. I mean, we're going to pop up. We're everywhere anyway, so no matter where you Google, just like our meetup. You can check us out at California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team meetup. All right. That being said, if you're watching from Facebook today, and a lot of you guys are, and you haven't done so already, and you like what you see and hear, please feel free to hit that follow button. We're always trying to build up the followers. I really appreciate it. Also, give us a thumbs up. If you like what you see, show me some love. Give me a thumbs up, smiley face, whatever you do up there, because that really helps us. And also, get in the chat room, chit-chat with me, chit-chat amongst yourselves. Because what that does is Facebook has a FYP on its computer, and when it triggers on the likes and all that stuff, it puts us up farther to distribute. It puts us out to more people to watch, okay? Like my big saying is, if you're watching, you like what you see, and there's other people in your house, right? Hey, come on over here and check this show out. It's a really cool show, okay? Small show, but a good show. So, yeah, Facebook does the same thing if it sees a lot of activity during this show, participation. That also goes for YouTube. We have a big YouTube site, and we have more than 900 videos over there on the YouTube site, and they're all of this show. All kinds of topics, everything you can think of. I'm a journalist, photojournalist, and I don't like to stay on the spooky stuff all the time. I like to cover, news trends and things. So you're going to see different stuff like that over there too. I've started to put everything into separate files so you guys can find it easier. If you're into a medium, what's going on today? If you're into listening to Medium Nancy Matz, feel free to check it out over there because it's got its own file. If you're into cryptids, boom, its own file, etc., etc. So I'm sure you'll find something that you like, okay? And just an FYI, I know there's a lot going on in the news politically and other stuff. I'm on Xfinity here. All my neighbors are on Xfinity here, so if there's a freeze up or slow down, it's because I'm seeing the little internet icon kind of pop up because that's Xfinity. Because it's just there's just not enough Xfinity to go around here, but yet there's a lot of it, right? So yeah, and the same thing goes for YouTube. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe if you like it. If you like what happens today, also thumbs up, happy face. love hearts, whatever. Do that. Chat in the chat room because again, YouTube has its own FYP. Same thing. It'll send us out to more people and send us out to more areas. That works for Twitch too. It's pretty much that way all across social media. So they pretty much work the same. There's an internet notice right there. It's just going to be popping up and down all day. Like I said, tons of people home today. Yeah, tons of people home today, so there's going to be internet issues, okay? All right, my guest today, I was just swinging on the show. My guest today, I heard him on the show, and what he had to say was absolutely fascinating. You know, you always see this stuff on TV where people that are in comas, are, you know, obviously they're lying in bed, tubes coming out and all that. But, you know, you always see their families having conversations with them, you know, thinking, okay, they're going to hear what I'm saying, right? I mean, that's just the thing you see on TV all the time. Well, my guest today, Alan Pearce, has done research on people that have been in comas, and boy, did he find out some very interesting things that even border on possible past lives, near-death experiences, and things like that. But I want to let him explain to you how he got into this and the studies that he's had and done, okay? And then we're going to get into all that good stuff and talk about NDEs and all that, okay? Here we go. Hello.
Hello, Charlotte. Hello, everyone listening. Hello.
Can you tell us about you, sir?
Well, me, generally speaking, I'm a journalist. My area of expertise has been foreign affairs and also certain aspects of cybersecurity. And what happened, lockdown happened, and my wife, who was until fairly recently a private investigator, lockdown happened, and we were watching the evening news, and yet more and more people are being placed into medically induced comas because they've got COVID. I've been thinking, well, just why? You know, just interesting. How does that happen? You know, what goes on? And also, what, if anything, do they experience within a coma? So we had time on our hands, so we just started looking. It turns out that everything they tell you about coma is wrong. Everything you think you know about coma is wrong. Wow. On one level, it's massively overused. On another, an awful lot of people died within coma who may not have died otherwise. People that survive coma, if you're lucky enough, as it were, are never the same people again. They're suffering all sorts of physical, psychological, mental issues as a consequence. The other thing that they tell you about coma is that your brain is offline. Therefore, you will have no memory of the event at all. This is simply not true. Over to you, Charlotte.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. And apologies.
I mean, I can tell you about events within coma, but, you know, where do we go? Because there's so many different things that happen to people within coma. On one level, it's you know, some people are definitely having a near-death experience. Because logically, you're in a coma, you're in intensive care, you are near death. So that certainly happens. But there's the flip side of that coin. When we generally hear about the near-death experience, it's a lovely, beautiful thing. You're in a beautiful countryside. Maybe you're climbing a stairway to heaven. Maybe you're meeting your dead relatives. And you've never felt happier or more at one with the universe. People inside coma, some are definitely getting that. Let's call that heaven. There are others within coma who go to hell. And for each one, when they're in a hell, it is dramatically different. But a number of people have told me that they're stuck in loops. One, for example, James told me, over and over again, he had to watch his wife, a wife not in this world, watch his wife die during childbirth over and over and over again.
Wow.
That would be his nightmare. And others have been trapped in scenarios that span decades, for example, that they feel that they can measure time within this nightmarish existence. And none of them ever really bear much resemblance to the real world. You know, watching somebody die during childbirth, we can all relate to that. We've possibly seen that sort of thing on television. But some of the other events within coma where people believe, for example, the doctors and the nurses, the hospital staff around them are conspiring against them, that they are out to kill them, that they're torturing them for sure. So, and here's the other thing. If you're in a coma, there's no one-size-fits-all coma tablet. You can't just press a button and send them down to a number 8 or whatever. It doesn't work like that. It's different for everybody. So some people go so deep. Others are just bubbling below the surface. And for them, the hospital world just weaves itself into their reality. Let's say, supposing there you are, you're in a coma, they've come round, they're going to clean your teeth. If you're in a coma, one person told me this, it felt exactly like she had been kidnapped and that the kidnapper had melted a toothbrush and stuck razor blades in the toothbrush and was slicing into her jaw. When people have bed baths within a coma, often they perceive that as rape or some form of sexual assault. So rather than lying peacefully, as most doctors and nurses will tell you, people are perceiving things entirely differently. And that's just at the top layer, as it were. I spoke to some, it's extraordinarily rare to measure somebody's brain activity when they're in a medically induced coma, unless it involves brain injury. Let's say they've got COVID. That doesn't happen. One doctor was curious to know just how deep people were going when he was sending them. And he was horrified to see just how low they were. For example, he was saying, they're as near to death as you can get. Looking at their brain scan on an EEG, he said it was like looking at a heart without a pulse. So people are really at death's door. And when they are, many people within coma, they're either trapped in some horrendous hell-like world, or maybe they're moving forward, climbing this stairway to heaven or whatever, meeting the dead relatives, and it's all good. On top of that, there's a whole other level where people have alternate lives. In some instances, they're clear lives, as in a mirror, say, of our own life. You know, your jobs, you get married, you go on vacation, you have kids, that sort of thing. And the level of detail within that life is akin to that, the life that we're living now. They come out of a coma, they think that was their real world, and that the world they suddenly find themselves in within the hospital is some other kind of reality, but not there. And when you've got a relative at the bedside holding their hand and whispering endearments, more often than not, you haven't got the first clue who that person is. The person you've left behind is a completely different husband, a completely different set of children, or what have you. And people come out of this, and it takes them a heck of a long time to come to realize, if they ultimately do realize, that they're in another world. Oftentimes, people who survive coma have to keep checking and just never sure if they're in a coma or not, never sure if they're alive or not. And the effect it has on people is unbelievable. And the really crazy thing that we discovered is that doctors and nurses have no concept of what they're putting their patients through, because the word coma itself is derived from a Greek word meaning deep sleep. Therefore, from the starting gate, everyone's thinking of it as sleep, but no one's sleeping within a coma. Your brain's switched off. You're not going through your circadian rhythms. You do not experience REM sleep, therefore you cannot dream. 3 days of sleep deprivation will drive most people over the edge. It's used universally as a torture. And yet, it's part of standard practice. If you're in an intensive care unit, you don't even need to be in a coma to have appalling sleep deprivation. You're not going to get a good 6 to 8 hours a night. You're lucky to get a snatch here, snatch there. This all builds up, and it leads to acute brain failure. So even if you're not in a coma, you're in ICU, and you're seeing all manner of crazy things, kangaroos. You think you're on the deck of a cruise ship, all manner of different things. And the more people react to that world, the more concerned the nursing staff get, And then they start to sedate them more and more, thinking that they're sparing them all this confusion. And then what they do, they send them down to another reality, a reality where the doctors and nurses are torturing them, a reality where they're
Mm-hmm.
trapped in hell, or a reality where they're having a completely different life. And no one understands this. No doctor or nurse understands this as a rule. We've managed through the course of the book to
Mm-hmm.
find a large number of doctors and nurses, comparatively speaking, they're a very small percentage, who are capable of, who've actually noticed that the damage that they have caused in their career by carrying out a standard medical procedure, they're horrified now they've discovered the damage that's being caused, and they're fighting the system to change it. But the funny thing is, there's no medical or scientific literature advocating prolonged deep sedation within an
Mm-hmm.
intensive care unit outside of a handful of cases, and even then, not prolonged. If you're
Mm-hmm.
having a brain seizure, they want to switch that off to save damage. If you've had certain wounds, injuries, such as abdominal, they need to keep you still. If you've had complications after heart surgery, the brain uses up an awful lot of oxygen. So
Mm-hmm.
the theory is we'll reduce the amount of oxygen and move that to the heart. And generally, people agree that that is how you can use deep sedation, but only for a short period of time. Since COVID and during COVID, almost anybody who's unwell, deeply unwell in some way that they are not entirely sure how to fix, gets put into a medically induced coma. And then it's a lottery if you come out or not.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you talked about the other night that got my attention was a gentleman who had been in one of these induced comas and came back talking about having lived another life while he was in this coma. And what that struck me as, I have been read for a past life. I've been hypnotized to go down under to get to my past life. And that's what it sounds like to me. If these
Yeah,
doctors are putting these people down so far, they could be reaching out to their past lives.
um, I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all had past lives.
Mm-hmm.
A vast number of the world's religions believe in reincarnation. Ancient religions all believed in reincarnation. We happen to
Mm-hmm.
live in a period in time, particularly in the Western world, where these things are just discounted as fantasy or something.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion, when I started this book, when I started researching the subject, I wasn't in any sense spiritual. I never even thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, having interviewed people who've died and come back and done all the research we've done, now I describe myself as 100% spiritual. And that I know for sure we do not die. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just looking at it from a scientific level, the first law of thermodynamics says energy, and we're all made of energy, cannot
Mm-hmm.
be destroyed nor created. It's just all around us and we utilize it. So when you die, you may be a great big ball of energy in this life. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
just go, that goes somewhere. And I'm convinced now, prior to this, if somebody was telling me this stuff, I'd
Mm-hmm.
have probably quietly scoffed at them. But now I know
Right.
it's completely true because I've spoken just to so many people. I've, you take this like any journalistic investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
spoken to eyewitnesses. I've read the evidence, and all the rest of it. I cannot fail but to be convinced. And when people are in a medically induced coma and they come out of it with all these incredible experiences, the doctors and the nurses don't know what to say. They simply don't know what to say. So they simply say things like, oh, I'm so sorry, it's a false memory. You
Mm-hmm.
may have just spent the last 20 years living a life in the American Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
having a particular job, having a family and children. To be told that this is a false memory
Mm-hmm.
just leaves you feeling insane with anger, and on another level, feeling that you've gone insane and that you've just had a life, taken a break from this life, had another life, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back to this life. That doesn't happen. It just
Mm-hmm.
does not happen. So when you try and explain that to a doctor or nurse, if you get the opportunity, which
Mm-hmm.
is rare, they say false memory, hallucination, delirium, and things like this. But it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to people who've had a near-death experience, one thing they almost always say is that this is more real than reality. And this is what everybody within a coma is telling me. It's as if all their senses are on hyperdrive. The vision is better, everything tastes better, they feel, see, emotions, everything is stronger. So when people just say to you, sorry, pal, that's a false memory. Don't worry about it. We've got some great medication for that. It just makes people livid. And no one has been paying attention. And it took, COVID, lockdown, two professional investigators just suddenly turning their attention to this, realizing something is seriously amiss, and telling a story that no one has told before. It's absolutely alarming because in terms of numbers, COVID, I don't know what the current death toll is. I'm not sure there's an accurate figure. But last I heard was 16 million people died within COVID.
Wow.
Now, if you were sent to an intensive care unit in the Western world, more than likely you would have been placed into a medically induced coma because they didn't know how else to cope with you. Put you on a ventilator, into a coma. Lottery, if you survive, great, move you down the line. If you don't, so sorry.
Right.
Whoa. And we've got stuck like this. This is the other thing. So since COVID, all hospitals are short-staffed. Everyone's cash-strapped. And when somebody comes in with a complication, let's just say pneumonia, for example, they just put them in a coma. But you shouldn't put them in a coma. They may need to be in a ventilator, but people can be alert and conscious on a ventilator. I've seen evidence of this, lots and lots and lots of it. The medical literature is clear about this and how to do it. The thing is, most doctors and nurses working in intensive care around the world do what they've always done, what the supervisor tells them to do, because they don't see any problems. And intensive care has become a conveyor belt of care where nobody actually gets to look over their shoulder at the product coming off the other end. They don't see the damage that they're causing. They're just too busy dealing with the next patient. And for the person coming out of a coma, if they've been on a ventilator, they've got appalling damage to their vocal cords. And oftentimes it's weeks before they can properly speak again. So there they are, coming out of a coma. And you're thinking, where's my wife? Where's my husband or whatever? Who are these people? And you cannot communicate. And you can't even lift a fork to your mouth. You can't wiggle your toes in many cases. And you're racked with pain and total discomfort. This goes on for months in many cases before people regain any degree of clarity. Then you're in a world where, as I say, you don't know who anybody is, your feet and hands don't function. You're not necessarily thinking too much about your past life, as it were, because you're now suddenly in a completely different environment. One woman told me when she came out of her coma, she didn't know who humans were.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's amazing. I mean, it's just astounding. But the doctors and nurses do not know this. And what we're trying to do with the book is wake them up to this one. And also to show people who've survived coma, and frankly, there are millions of them currently, that they didn't experience this on their own. And when the doctor said, I'm sorry, pal, it's a false memory, they're fobbing you off because they do not understand. No doctor or scientist can explain our current level of consciousness. They just can't explain it. So when they push people to the depths of consciousness and people come back with stories that are mind-blowing, they can't even begin to explain those. So all they can do is go back to the medical dictionary and find different terms for mental illness, because that's how they deal with it. And the patient, poor person coming out of this, maybe they had the most beautiful experience. Maybe it's been wonderfully life-changing. Maybe it hasn't. The hospital system is not helping them. If they talk to friends and family, first thing they're going to say is, well, doctors know best. And then they're going to say, well, dear, until recently, you were drugged up to the eyeballs and beyond. What do you expect? End of story. So these poor people, and since we've brought this book out, it's only been out a matter of days, people are actually writing to us and saying, thank you so much, because somebody is finally listening. We can't believe it. And this is what we're hoping to achieve. So people just know they're not alone. And if you've had a friend or family who've been in a coma, maybe they're not really explaining things to you, you'll get a great idea of where they've been within a coma. It's not the same for everyone. It's remarkably different for everyone. But it is dramatic in almost every case.
Let's talk about some of the NDEs that you have in your book, because it's fascinating. It's a fascinating read. So if you could do that, that'd be great.
Well, some of the NDEs are very much classic, as in very nice things happen. But oftentimes when people are having events within coma, that's not the first thing that happens.
Okay.
Something absolutely grisly will happen. Let's give you the example of Isabel. Isabel is a medical professional working at a hospital in Cape Town, and she contracted COVID, and they placed her into a medically induced coma. And what happens to a lot of people when they're relating events within coma, they say, I woke up within my coma, in the way that you or I might wake up on the sofa, having just dozed off for a while. And now we're back in this reality, and it's clearly this reality. Deborah wakes up and finds herself in an organ harvesting facility. She's kept there for 4 years in a coffin, and they found a way to keep growing her organs over and over again. And she lives in hell for 4 years. An awful lot of other appalling things happen to her. She has one life after another after another. And when I talk of lives, well, she's having a death, one death after another. And curiously, in for her and also others within, she was telling me, within her coma lives, in every one she was paralyzed. So she was very much at the mercy of everybody. One occasion, in occasion, she was like the middle 1800s, and she was being held kidnapped. And she could go into all manner of detail: the clothing people wearing, the lace around the collar, the brooches, all of this sort of detail. And then she's murdered within that life. And then she's in another life. And then she's in the Arizona desert. She's being murdered there. And this just goes on and on and on. And it gets to a point for Isabel that she just can't take it any longer. She just, many people are fighting whatever's happening to them within their coma. Many just give up, and I dare say a lot that didn't return just gave up. So Isabel gave up. And then she finds herself in a field with tall green grass, and the breeze is blowing, and birds are singing, and she can hear a horse neighing in the distance. And she just walks around, and she comes to a lake, and there's beautiful trees leaning over the lake. And then she finds a big wooden staircase going into heaven, just going up into the sky. And she knows at the bottom is life, and at the top is death. And she says, I struggled so much within my coma, I had to climb those stairs. And she climbs those stairs. She got to 4 steps from the top. And she said, I've never felt so happy in all my life. Just so perfect. Everything was just beautiful. It was like the night, but without stars. It was beautifully expansive. I was so at peace. And then she heard, Isabel. Somebody's calling her name. Isabel, you have to come back now. She said, I was so pissed off. And she said, I stomped back down those stairs. She actually physically had to stomp back down the stairs. And she had to undertake a journey to get back to the time when she finally woke up within the hospital. And being a medical professional, she gets to a degree of recovery. She obviously goes back. And these are her work colleagues, particularly the intensive care people, the anaesthetists, the doctors, the nurses. And she tries to tell them about what she experienced within her coma. And it's like, oh yeah, oh really? Oh, it's interesting. And it's like not taking it even remotely seriously. And she feels crazy because of that. She has made an effort to contact other coma survivors to see if they've been through it, because from a medical background, that's where her interest lies. And she managed to find them. But so many people that have experiences like Isabel's don't know to contact anybody else, don't know what to do, and they keep it to themselves.
It's incredible. And as a ghost hunter and working with psychics as closely as I do, everything you're telling me makes perfect sense. You know, the fact that they're in that induced state, because like I said, when the whole thing for me to go to my past life was done on me, I was really, really deep in hypnosis, really deep. And so to me,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm so interested about people who've had past life regression. Yeah. When you were there, did you live it, as it were, minute by minute, and feel everything of that life, or were you viewing it remotely, say like watching a movie, a high def movie or something? What was
interesting was the lady that did it to me had trouble with me because I guess I'm not a visual person. I feel. So she actually had me walking across the fields because I was a farmer and a rancher kind of thing, and she actually had me walking across the fields and bending down to feel the dirt. So I could feel all that stuff. I could feel all the emotions, all the dirt, everything that was around me. It was fascinating.
But she was making you do that, as it were, rather than you as part of your farming life, testing the soil, for example.
Right.
You were on a different level there. You weren't like getting ready to go home and have dinner or something, were you? Necessarily?
No. It's like she said, it was hard on her because the majority of the people that she does that with are visual, so they're able to see their life. But for me, I had to physically participate to feel the stuff that was going on around me.
Well, I'm intrigued to know that.
Yeah.
From what I understand, certainly from talking to the coma survivors, they are there 100%.
Yes.
In the same way that I can slap the desk here now and pick up a glass of water and taste the water, they can do that. And talk to their partner and say, "What should we have for dinner tonight, honey?" That kind of level of being there.
Right.
And I can't find a parallel for that anywhere. Near-death experiences, for sure. The horrendous nightmares, we found parallels with, for example, we spoke to a lot of people who went to the Amazon and drank the mystic brew ayahuasca. And when they do that, they're going with a guide. They've been prepped. They've probably read a lot about it. They have a notion of what to expect. And often, certainly initially when you take ayahuasca, one of the few times you might do it, it can turn hideously nightmarish. But because you're briefed for this, don't do this. You might see, for example, yourself standing in front of you, being eaten by worms. Now, you're prepped for that, and you're said if you see something of this order, it is to know that that's only your body and your spirit is separate. So you're prepped. When this happens to somebody in a coma, remarkably similar things to happening in ayahuasca, no one has prepped them. And these things are sheer nightmares, and they're beyond anything they've ever experienced before in their life. People talk of nightmares or dreams, ask anyone to recall any dream from 3 years ago, and they just can't do it. Whereas people who've had events within coma remember it like the birth of their first child, that kind of detail. And they're just left so distraught because there's this utter lack of understanding. What needs to happen is, the medical world needs to look for explanations elsewhere. As in, let's debrief some of the people coming out of coma and see what happens to them.
Sure.
This is exceptionally rare. Exceptionally rare. I spoke to one nurse practitioner at Vanderbilt Medical School, and she did a very, very rare study interviewing coma survivors. And she said after every interview, I thought that I needed some therapy myself because everything they told me was so distressing. No one listening to them, the horrors. Almost every one of them has got PTSD. If you've not even been in a coma, but you're left in an intensive care unit, the chances are 80% chance of contracting post-traumatic stress disorder. So these people are in a mess. And often, if they're with the breadwinner, they can't work again. In many cases, this is so awful, tens of points are knocked off people's IQs during coma because of the brain damage. Let's say you were brilliant at math, for example, and working in accounts. You come out of coma, you try to go back to your job, and you find you can't even add up your checking account. I'll give you an example, and also from Vanderbilt Medical School. Dr. Wesley, earlier on in his career, had noticed that coma survivors were not faring well, unusual that he even noticed, and he decided to perform some tests on them. And he had a particular mathematical whiz. She had an IQ of 140, allegedly, before her coma. When she came out of her coma, she couldn't manage her checking account. So Dr. Wesley performed a number of tests on her. He had another IQ test taken. She'd gone from an impressive, very impressive 140 down to 100, which renders her mentally subnormal by comparison. And they put her into an MRI scanner and looked at her brain. And she's about 35, I can't remember exactly. Her brain resembled that of a very old woman with dementia. Elements of her brain had shriveled. Now, these aren't blips, as the hospital will tell you. You'll get your memory back. Don't you worry about it. This is perfectly normal. Everyone's a bit dazed after the event. That's not dazed. That's a hospital-acquired condition that no one wants to talk about, that is not covered by insurance. And that's one of the large reasons that this is just never discussed.
Well, do you think, and I'm not a doctor, I can't give medical advice and things like that, but you think when they're doing this that they're putting people so low as far as their, well, they won't even say it, oxygen going to the brain. I mean, that's what it's all about. When you don't have oxygen going to your brain starts to shrivel up and close up. So is
but they're not turning the oxygen off to the brain. They want to keep the brain oxygenated.
Right.
They want to keep the body well oxygenated, which is one of the reasons they place people onto the mechanical ventilators.
Okay.
What they're not getting is the sleep deprivation, because when they sit beside the bedside and they say to somebody, "Time now for a nice sleep," right? It is not sleep. When they say to the relatives, your husband's in the deepest form of restorative sleep, let nature and the meds do their job. This is nonsense. This is total nonsense. You're not having your circadian rhythms. You're not going through REM sleep. All sorts of other knock-ons. If you're not having your circadian rhythms, your kidneys are not going through their 24-hour cycle. They're not processing all the junk that they're putting in you. Terrible meds, propofol, benzos, opiates, all sorts of things. And they're not being processed. And this stays within the system. And because you're lying in bed for so long, there's appalling muscle wastage, but it's not apparent because they're so pumped full of fluids. In some cases, up to 50 pounds in weight, excess fluid, that they disappear puffy, and you can't see the damage that's been caused. Small wonder when eventually they try to get them out of bed, that they can't even stand up, can't feel their feet. They're just full of fluid. And when I say fluid, it's not just, water or something. It's an awful lot of it, of the meds, the residue of the meds that the kidneys have not been able to process. All the toxins that are expelled from your body on a 24-hour basis, they're in your system. You think, speak to a doctor and you say, this is so likely to happen. Why wouldn't it happen? And they couldn't answer you because, of course, it's going to happen. But they just don't even get past the starting block, which is it's sleep. Nice sleep. Have a nice sleep. And that's it. And if they do talk about it, they're in danger of moving into malpractice zones because these are hospital-acquired conditions that can easily be avoided. Easily avoided if you actually brought yourself up to speed with the current medical literature, which has come on leaps and bounds since COVID because so many people globally were placed into comas. And because of that, sheer scale of the damage is suddenly becoming apparent, but slowly apparent. And it's not easy to wake people up to this, particularly if you've worked in intensive care for a long time, say 30 years as a nurse, and you say to them, you don't need to sedate people, and they're going to say, hold on a second, I've been doing this for so long. You know, our patients are sick. We're doing the best we can for them. This is sparing them any trauma. You will not very easily, if at all, convince them to change. And this is the dilemma in the medical world now. In many ways, if we ever get rid of prolonged deep sedation within hospital, it's going to have to wait for the 30-year veterans to retire and the new nursing staff to come in who are reading the new literature, and then they can take it from there. As part of the book, what we've been doing is getting voice artists to tell some of the stories of people within coma. And it's called comapodcast.com. It's also on YouTube. And funny enough, in Maryland, it's now been taken on the curriculum for training intensive care nurses, because they can see what 5 different people, all completely different events, what they're experiencing within coma. And to know, if you're brushing their teeth, you're giving them a bed bath, they think they're being assaulted. And to know that, because they're not trained. No one ever trains you about that. But the key thing is, they shouldn't be deeply sedated anyway. You know, if you're putting somebody on a mechanical ventilator, the key is to warn them ahead of time, tell them it's going to happen. It's actually not as unpleasant as one might imagine it to be. They will sedate you. They will put the vent in, and then just gently bring you out. So there's no opportunity to get aggravated or upset about the thing. Best yet, you maybe have a relative sitting beside you, holding your hand, stroking your hair, and then it's kind of easy. And then before you know it, the mechanical ventilators now, the modern ones, allow the patient to initiate the breathing. So it's not as if you're fighting against some machine. You're able just to slowly bring a breath in, and it's working for you. And you're breathing so much better than you were before you found yourself in intensive care. So already you're feeling better. Within a very short period of time, hours, hopefully, they just have you up, just move you to a chair, back to the bed again. And then as the days progress, they have you moving around the intensive care unit. And because you're awake, because you're exercising your muscles, you're invested in your own recovery. And for a lot of people who are in intensive care and they're bedbound, the big aha moment is that minute when they get out of bed and they actually manage to walk to the chair or something. Well, if you can initiate this straight away, already people are on the road to recovery. When you've these people so deeply into sedation, you go into some intensive care units, and it's like being in a sci-fi movie where everybody's in stasis. Nobody appears alive. And people in that condition, particularly if they're in a nightmare world, they're not fighting to get over pneumonia or sepsis or whatever. They're fighting because they're in the depths of hell, and all their energies are going in the wrong direction. And this is just not known. So the key, just not known generally, the key is to limit the sedation to a very, very, very short period of time. If someone gets agitated, there are things for anxiety and so on. But the best thing for anxiety is human contact. Hold someone's hand, talk them down gently, make them feel comfortable. Because for many people, being in intensive care, you're being pushed in on a gurney. It's all noise and beeping and rush of activity, people stretching for stuff. And then the next thing you know, because they're so busy, they're putting you down and they haven't even had a chance to say, oh, by the way, before you go down, we should tell you, you're going to have some terrible experiences. Sorry about that. They don't even do this. And when you come out of there, no one talks to you. It's horrible.
When you talk about these doctors and how, in order for the changes to occur, it's going to take the up-and-coming younger doctors to do it. I've noticed that with my friends that have had psychological issues, and I noticed it with my mother, too, because my mother had dementia, but my mother was also psychic. And I remember going in, 10 years ago to, say, the emergency room, and they would say, well, they would ask me if she was hallucinating. And then I would look at them and go, well, that depends what you call hallucinations. because we're going out ghost hunting. She's seeing these ghosts, and all this is going on. And over the last 10 years, I have seen changes. I have seen changes in the ER people. I have seen changes in the psychiatrists because, like you say, it's a younger bunch, and so they understand.
There is,
yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's not like a tidal wave or a tsunami, but we are seeing evidence of spirituality just in people generally, certainly since COVID. People are waking up to these possibilities. We're seeing this more and more. Naturally, it's happening within the medical and scientific worlds. When you look at the search for artificial intelligence, it's crucial to understand the workings of the mind. Now, you ask a doctor or scientist, where is the mind? And they might point to their forehead. But when you look inside, it's not there. Nobody understands the mind. No one understands consciousness. So they would do extraordinarily well to talk to people surviving coma. And they are spending more and more money now looking at the workings of the brain. They should be looking at the workings of the mind, because we can demonstrate very, very clearly in this book that the two are not the same thing. You're in hospital, your brain is completely flatlining. I mean, a complete flatline on the EEG. Nothing is going on at all. And yet, your mind is incredibly active, more active in point of fact than it might be generally in your life. And, well, this is not understood.
Do you think, with this book and the research you've done, have you had any doctors contact you or anything like that after having written this?
Oh, yeah. Well, we involved the whole way through this, doctors and nurses, nurse practitioners, various other clinicians. We've ran the copy of the book through doctors and nurses and so forth. It's exactly the same with coma survivors. This is unlike my normal journalistic practice where you write an article and you don't show it to the subjects.
Right.
Only gets shown to your editor or a lawyer, and that's it. With this, we've wanted to get everything right. So we've had some of the finest people. Dr. Wesley Vanderbilt is acknowledged as the finest mind in critical care medicine today. He wrote the foreword to the book. There's nurse practitioner Kaylee Dayton, who is a beaming lighthouse in the world of bringing modern practices to the intensive care unit. She was instrumental in steering this book. So for sure, what we haven't heard is doctors who think you put somebody into a medically induced coma for all manner of things, read the book or see the book, and then come to us. My wife B is a private investigator. She thinks we're going to get a lot of stick from the medical world. Look at it this way. They haven't got any evidence. They haven't got a leg to stand on. For example, you could say, just show me a paper. Show me any medical literature advocating prolonged deep sedation. They can't. You could say to them, when was the last time you followed a patient home from intensive care? And they haven't. So again, they haven't got a leg to stand on. When did you last keep yourself up to date on the medical literature, which incidentally is all listed at the back of the book? And they obviously haven't. So I don't think we're going to get many arguments. I think, like on Amazon and the reviews, there'll be an awful lot of, I've been doing this job for 30 years and I can tell you. But, quite frankly, they wouldn't have read the book, because once you read the book, you can see just where the problems are. And you can see precisely how certain things happen. You can see the triggers for certain things, how to avoid the triggers, like this ICU delirium, as I say, where you're seeing kangaroos or you think you're on the deck of a cruise ship. That's so easy to counter. That resembles, for example, a thing called the prisoner's cinema. Prisoners in solitary confinement with no stimulation, no mental, physical stimulation, visual stimulation at all. Their mind will start to create images within a very short period of time. They're getting often exquisitely beautiful oriental, mosaics and patterns and all the rest of it. The longer they're in a situation like that, they see other people in the room. They see other creatures in the room. They find themselves in other realities. And we can see why this is happening, because the brain is not stimulated. And this is precisely what's happening to people in intensive care. So stimulate them. Talk to them. Okay? Don't keep them hovering just below the surface on drugs or deeper yet. Okay? So you can just learn straight away. It's kind of yeah, blindingly obvious, so many of these things. Blindingly obvious they're not sleeping. You've switched their brain off. Talk me through it. Yeah. So I don't know what kind of reaction we're going to get from the medical world. I think if anyone's smart enough, they'll actually finish reading the book, and then everything that we say in this book, as it points that we make, is backed up by all the latest literature, and it's checked and double checked and checked by all these smart people whose business it is. So we know we're right. We know we're right, and yeah, let's see what we get. But the reaction I'm getting more than from anyone is coma survivors just saying thank you. Suddenly, someone's listening. You referred to Coast to Coast. There are phone-ins. So 7 people called in. 7 was coma survivors. Not one had ever shared their experience with another coma survivor. When one had sought an explanation for events within coma, and he described a really beautiful near-death experience, but a very different one, the doctor said, well, you have a vivid imagination, don't you? That's the explanation he gets.
Right.
And I felt that all 7 of these coma survivors, everything in the book was just coming as complete news to them. Why did they feel so bad? Why is their memory shot full of holes? Why did I feel like I'd gone mad? Why do I have to keep pinching myself to see if I'm alive? This is where the book's really going to score. And also for families. But also, I've got to say this, this is not just like a rare thing, like some kind of odd illness that you hear about, but you're not going to get. Statistically, if you live in the Western world, you can expect up to 2, sometimes 3 stays in intensive care unit. In the Western world, you're less likely to die from accidents and so forth. You are more likely to find yourself in intensive care unit towards the end of your life. And when you do, if they're carrying on with these substandard procedures, they will place you into a medically induced coma. And before you know it, you will be having loop after loop after loop in the depths of hell. I mean, if you come out of there, because so many do not, no one's going to take you seriously. So we should all be alert to this. We should all be alert that this is a ridiculous procedure that is massively overused. It's killing people. It's damaging everybody else. Tomorrow, they may try and put one of your loved ones into a coma. And you find out about it first, because I wouldn't let it happen. I'd fight tooth and nail to prevent anybody I cared for. Even people I don't like, I'd fight tooth and nail to stop it happening, because it mustn't happen.
Right. Was it hard to get the nurse practitioners and doctors that you did speak to about this on board to comment?
No. It's a bit like the coma survivors. Suddenly they're going, thank you. Someone's paying attention, because they're in a vacuum. No one's really listening to them. And even when they're trying to practice when they're trying to practice the most up-to-date medical procedures, they're getting in trouble, getting reported by people who think the kindest thing to do is to put them in a coma. And people having their licenses questioned and having to go before tribunals. Their evidence is to put up the latest medical procedures, and the defense is, where's yours? Because there isn't any. But this is regular. So Kaylee Dayton, the nurse practitioner, we just realized we were both on the same mission. And she was so exceptionally helpful, introduced me to so many people, which in turn led me to meet other people, taught me through the medical literature, because we have read, I don't know how many thousands upon thousands of pages of medical literature. That helped narrow that down. We also knew that we were missing anything, because Kaylee Dayton, Dr. Wes Ely, so many others have had a desperate search themselves to find medical literature that advocates prolonged deep sedation, and they can't find it. The medical journal, The Lancet, I spoke to the editors there and I said, can you point me to any articles you've published advocating prolonged deep sedation in intensive care? He said, we'll come back to you. A few days later, we haven't published a single one. Not one. ever. And this goes back, like, no, 1800s or something. And they said, we give you access to our archives. So be it, my wife and I plow through their archives. And there's nothing in there advocating prolonged deep sedation. So if you find yourself in court, for example, and you've got to defend these practices, you haven't got a lot to call on. You really, really haven't. And this is why it's also worrying that the lawyers that sort of chase car crashes and stuff, if they get wind of this sort of thing, which they will eventually, that this person has been seriously damaged because they were placed in given a medical procedure that there's no basis for, you can sue. Yeah? And once the first one of those starts to happen, everyone's going to wake up. I don't want it to go down that path, because everyone who works in intensive care, presumably the whole of medicine, does it for the best of all interests. They do it because they don't want to harm patients. They do it because they want the best for their patients. Right. And to sue them because they're doing what their supervisor's always done, because they've not had an opportunity to see the damage that they've done. That's really horrifying. But it's possible it's going to go that way.
But the question I have, and I know you're not a doctor, and I'm not either, is there an alternative to putting somebody in a coma? Are there any?
Just don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm just saying earlier. Supposing, the big argument is the ventilator. You do not need to be on a ventilator. You do not need to be unconscious, rendered senseless on a ventilator. Initially, while they're putting the thing in place, yeah, for sure. When they're taking it out, yeah, sure. But you don't have to be kept down. There's almost, I said at the beginning,
right, brain
seizures, certain wounds, heart issues. Beyond that, nothing. I look on forums, and I think about 3-4 days ago, somebody's saying, I was placed into a medically induced coma. I had cysts on my liver. Why? Why would knocking somebody unconscious and turning off all their bodily functions help someone with cysts on the liver? Because they don't know what to do. And it's just like, we haven't got the staff. It's so much easier if we just turn everybody every 2 hours, treat them like sacks of potatoes, and we think we're saving money, which is not saving money, because those people are going to spend longer in intensive care as a consequence. Everything about intensive care is horribly expensive. If you've got them up, moving around, interacting with people, pet therapy, all manner of stuff, they will walk more or less out of that intensive care unit, not pushed on a gurney to some care facility down the line where they won't be able to speak for a fortnight. There's so many. It's just basic humanity when it comes to how to treat people. One of the lessons we learned with COVID was the lack of human contact, and how that led to an enormous number of problems, all sorts of different forms of post-traumatic stress disorder for patients, for families, all the rest of it. And they know just by limiting patients' visits from family, it's the most detrimental effect on their well-being. And so just by having people in and just having people come in, therapists, and just, I don't know, giving you a head massage or something, and just talking to you about your kids and the wedding or something like that. You're interacting. Your brain is not getting that opportunity to go off into the depths of wherever. And no one's sending you down to these depths by sedating you because they haven't got a better idea what to do with you. And there you are. You're invested in your own recovery, and you will get better. Statistically, it's in the literature. It's proven you will get better.
Alan, this hour has blown by. This is such a fascinating topic. I learned so much today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What's next for you?
There's nothing else. I mean, we've written a book that has exposed a global health catastrophe. I'm not entirely sure how to top that. I think the key thing to do is to keep getting the message out.
Sure.
And to find let coma survivors find the book, for starters. If you know anyone that's been in a coma or family of, draw their attention to this book, which is also an audio book, by the way. And we next want to try and concentrate on doctors and nurses, try and get the opportunity to speak at conferences and so on and so forth, and to tell them what they're doing. And in the same way that our comapodcast.com videos are now being used in Maryland as part of a training module, it should be not just us, anyone make them. Interview coma survivors, show them what's happening. And this is the sphere we are now going to move into, getting that word out and keeping it out and bringing about change.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much for coming on. How can people find you?
Well, my name is Alan Pearce. You can see it on the screen. I'm alanpearce.com. That's an easy way. If you typed in Coma and Near-Death Experience into any search engine, you will find us. If you find my website, you will find my email address. And I always respond to people that write without fail. May not be immediately, but I will do definitely and with thought. So you can definitely contact me. And please share this knowledge, because if you've been in the coma or know someone that has, it's crucial that they find out about this. And thank you for the opportunity.
Where can people get your books or your book?
Anywhere books are sold, anywhere.
Okay.
So it's paperback, it's an ebook. Audiobook is coming out in April, few weeks or so from now. Anywhere you buy books, if you've got a bricks and mortar favorite shop, just go there, get it there. Maybe it's on the shelf, maybe they get it in 2 days. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, BAM, everywhere possible.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. Maybe we'll get you on a later date to talk about this again. Because like you say, it's nice to have that to get that awareness out, so people understand it.
Oh, I imagine listening now, there will be a number of people, possibly a large number of people, who have been in the intensive care unit, that have experienced these terrible other realities. Absolutely. Many of them will have been sedated to coma levels, and many others perhaps have lost loved ones within the coma. And it's important that they know what happens. It's truly important that they know what happens. And it's not this book's not a downer. Ultimately, it's incredibly uplifting. As I say, I've gone from being not even thinking about the spiritual world to describe myself as 100% spiritual now, completely believing, we don't die, we move on. And I feel that somehow this has been my mission to get this book out. And that's this life. Let's see what I do next time around. That's the big question.
Absolutely. All right, Alan. Well, you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you coming on.
Charlotte, thank you so much.
You have a great one.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Yeah, I've learned so much. Even when I heard him on the other show, the information was just incredible that came out. I just wanted to let him talk. I mean, he's the one with all the info. Let him talk, right? All right. Tomorrow we'll be back at our usual time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, with medium Nancy Mass, and we're going to have a discussion about the movie Soul. And I actually saw this movie this week. I loved it. I agree with Nancy. I love it. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I want to thank everybody that was here today. And I want to thank everybody that's going to be listening tonight. Because, of course, there'll be people that couldn't catch this during the day, so they'll be catching it at night. But it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about. And very, very interesting. I actually read the book. The book is fantastic. So if you want a real good read, get that book. So I'll leave you with his contact information and the book information. And then I'll leave you, and I'll see you guys at 6:30 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. Remember, we're equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Just trying to get the word out about our little show. And with you guys passing it on all the time, it's working. Every month we do better and better, and I'm real excited about that. So here we go. Let's get his information set up, and then I will let you guys go. Websites. Whoa, you know what? Wrong guy. Look at this. I got the wrong website, guys. All right, well, you've already had to contact him. So look up Alan Pearce and Coma. Exactly what he said, and I apologize for that. The correct websites are on the, I don't know how that even came up. See, weird things are happening lately with my laptop. I apologize to him, because I know he's in the green room. I apologize over that. It should have been his information. Anyway, so, yeah, in the description of this, for YouTube and everything, it's there. His website and how to get a hold of him. And, of course, you can get the book at Amazon. All right, guys. Before Murphy's Law kicks in again, I'm out of here. Have a great one.